Hey everyone, welcome back to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host Sayan, and today's episode holds a lot of heart. We are diving deep into something that touches all of us at some point in our life: loss. Whether it's losing a loved one, a relationship, or even a version of ourselves, healing from that kind of pain can feel impossible at first. But what if healing your heart could actually transform your mind and bring you back to life in ways you never imagined? So, joining me today is someone who truly embodies that transformation, Michelle Bader Ebersole. She's an author, speaker, certified grief recovery specialist, and the founder of Widow Goals, a nonprofit helping people rebuild life after loss. At 41, she became a widow, raising three kids, and through faith and resilience, she turned her grief into purpose. Michelle now leads retreats, workshops, and hosts her own show, We Wrote Too Soon, guiding others through their own journeys of healing. So, wherever you are, maybe on your morning walk, maybe stuck in traffic, or just trying to slow down after a long week, take a deep breath with me, and we're going to talk about peace, purpose, and the quiet strength that comes from a healing heart. So, welcome to the show, Michelle. It's an absolute honor to have you here with me today.
Oh, thank you, Sayan. I'm happy to be here. Definitely.
Yeah, I think we're going to talking about a lot of, I would say, personal yet intimate stuff today. And Michelle, your story is such a powerful example of what it means to rebuild after unimaginable loss. And I think a lot of people listening today can relate to that feeling, maybe in some other aspect when life changes in a moment and you're left wondering how to even begin again. So I want to start there, at that crossroad, the moment when grief starts to shift, even just slightly, from pain towards purpose. What was that turning point when grief started to shift from that pain to something that felt more purposeful?
That's a great question. So, first of all, I want to say that grief is the loss of anything in your life, the loss or change. So, we have all experienced grief. So, I'll be sharing from, where I've come from. But yes, every single human being, even kids, we've all gone through grief. So, yes, this topic will touch everybody. So, I think the moment, well, I'd have to kind of go back to about a month after my husband died. And it was the first time I remember laughing because I'd been in such deep, sorrow and mourning and all of that stuff. I also had 3 teenage kids, and it's kind of a funny example. We were out in the country at my cousin's, um, farm, and I was milking a cow, which I hadn't done since I was, like, a little kid, and all of a sudden, my daughter and I were laughing, and I was like, "Okay, there's still good in the world." That was, like, the first moment I remember. It wasn't quite the purpose part yet, but it was like, "Okay, there's more to life than just my husband died and I'm just gonna survive." And so that was the first thing that I remember, and then a few months down the road as I started, this is how I explain grief to people, that when you're first in it, and again, this can be the loss of relationship, death, moving, it can be anything that grief is. The very beginning is it's like dark clouds every day. Every day just seems like dark storms and clouds. And then one day, like the day I started laughing, there's like a little bit of sunshine. And you're like, wait, there's a good world out here. And then as time goes on and you get healing, you start to have like, okay, it's like 75% stormy and then about 25% good. And then it continues moving on into a place eventually where it's mostly sunny, but I'll still have some, I'm 5 years out, I'll still have some stormy days where, I'm in grief. So anyways, as I started to heal and have like maybe, 25% sunny days, I was like, okay, there's good. How can I turn what I've been through to help other people? So I actually started with a TikTok channel 4 years ago and just started sharing what was helping me. And I couldn't believe the response. There were so many widows and widowers on there who were like, yeah, me too. And so that was the very, very beginning when I was like, okay, if I had to go through this, I'm going to do something good with this. And I'm personally am a Christian, and there's a verse in the Bible that talks about God taking mourning and turning into dancing and beauty from ashes. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to stay stuck in this forever. And so that began this journey of turning what I'd been through into purpose. I think that was the very first step. And from there, I decided to start a podcast. I met a widower and we were, both faith based and we're like, okay, we need to share what's helped bringing us peace. And so we
Mm.
had, in 21, we started Widow Too Soon podcast. And so we had him, like the widower perspective, and he had little kids, and then the widow perspective with teenagers. And we were able to start talking through everything. And then it grew into creating a nonprofit for widows to provide support to those who feel alone. And then I became a grief recovery specialist, which is kind of how I know a lot about all kinds of grief and started helping people work through and unpack all their pain because it's like this. So we're all born with this empty backpack. And as we have losses, they're rocks put in our backpack. And it's everything that's a loss. You move away, your pet dies, like all of that is losses. And then one day something big happens, like a boulder, and you can't move anymore. And so what I help people do through grief recovery is unpack those. We actually go through the losses and work through them so that you can function in life again. And so all these things kind of work together. And eventually I went on to write a book that is not only for widows, but it's called Widow Goals Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse. And what I did was put everything that I wanted. It's 30 goals to help you through grief. So that's a long answer to your question of like, when did it switch for me? And, where I started to feel like, okay, I'm going to help people.
Mm. Wow, it's really the I feel like the first question, but here I am lost at loss of words. But it's after hearing your story, it's so powerful to realize how healing often sneaks in quietly, right? Before even we realize it's happening. And what you said essentially makes me think about how in those moments, it's not about just time passing; it's about trust. I think trust in something um that something good is going to happen, right? Because everything feels like when everything feels like it's falling apart, trusting that there's still meaning,
Yeah.
in the chaos, can feel almost impossible. And yet somehow that's where faith, I think, starts to rebuild itself. And Michelle, you talk a lot about trusting God through the chaos for loss. For people who feel angry or disconnected from their faith after any kind of tragedy, how can they start to rebuild that trust?
Mhm. That's very, very common. I went through a little bit of that, because your person's gone or the breakup or the whatever that wasn't the life wasn't the way you thought it would be. So we can all relate to that.
Right.
And it's very natural to be angry at God. But what I tell people is tell him he knows anyway, like work through it. Like it's okay to be angry. And another huge piece of advice I give people is feel it because if you don't feel it, you're not going to heal. If you're stuffing your grief down, you'll never get through it. It's like that nursery rhyme. Going on a bear hunt. This is how I talk to people about grief. Can't go around it, can't go under it, can't go over it, got to go through it. That is literally the only way you will heal. And that's why I've met people going through grief 10 years, 20 years after their big event that are still in that place. It's because they never felt it. And so, in order to get to that better place of peace and of faith and of all of it, you have to feel it. And I tell people, it doesn't matter where you're at grocery store, walking down the street, wherever, like things can hit you in a second and you're going to be brought back.
Mm.
Just feel it. Who cares what people think? Like, it's your healing. You've got to care so much about your healing that you let yourself feel those feelings because we can't heal without it. And so that's one of the biggest things that I would say in order, no matter what your beliefs are, but to work through coming to a place of peace is letting yourself feel the feelings because if you stuff it down, it's never going to get better.
That's I would say, a much needed reminder. It's where healing really begins. And I love how you said, it's not one big breakthrough moment, but a series of like tiny choices that slowly rebuild trust. And that kind of steady healing, right? That quiet faith and motion in something that like in just simply being optimistic, right? Really shows up in your work. And you have taken what you have lived through and turned it into something that helps others find their footing again. So I want to ask you this: through your nonprofit Widow Goals, you have helped so many people, rebuild life after loss. All of the social media stuff that you talked about earlier, what's one practice or mindset shift you've seen someone move from just surviving to actually living again?
Mm. One of the simplest things, I also lead a grief group at a senior center, and I gave them homework the first month, and it was to
Mm.
every night write down 3 things that you're thankful for. 3 things, and it came back just a couple weeks ago, we had our second thing, and she said, "That changed everything for me." She goes, "Even looking back at my first couple days, they were kinda negative, I couldn't find that much, but now I find it every day."
Mm,
And, we
mm,
actually have I'm sure you know this, we have neural pathways in our brain, whatever we feed them becomes stronger, whatever we're looking for, we're going to find. And so I would say whatever your grief is, just take this practice, start doing it. If you can't think of 3, start with 1. If that's like, okay, 3 is overwhelming. At the end of every day, write it down and you're gonna be surprised, like, what happens. And I have seen so many people I think the most rewarding thing that I've seen is meeting people I call them baby widows, they're brand new in this journey, and seeing them grow and then turn into leaders themselves. For example, I met one girl, I don't know, a few months into her journey, we went through grief recovery together, it really poured into her, and then she
mm,
decided to start her own widows group in her area, and now she's supporting widows in her area, and then they get
mm,
the confidence, and then they support other people, and so what we do is really, it's a snowball effect. When we can see the positive and we can start helping people, they're gonna help someone else. Another example, when I was a baby widow, someone I didn't know, who's now one of my closest friends, her name's Stacy, she reached out to me on social media and said, "Hey, I'd love to get together with you, just talk about this journey." And she poured into me, and now I'm able to pour into other people, and it continues. And that's also part of our healing is when we can pour into other people, we kind of forget about our own stuff for a little bit. And so that in my book, I also talk about, giving back and how much that is so helpful for all of our journeys in healing for sure.
mm. Well, that really resonates. It's very powerful. The thing that you mentioned about at the end of each day, just sitting down by yourself and identifying, I would say, what is good in your life, or what is that one thing you're thankful for today. I think it forces the mind to think um, in a different way,
Yeah.
right? Instead of looking at the negative things, you're making it look for the positive things in your life. And I mean, that's what I think a change in narrative is truly, right. And because at that point you are solely responsible for that reason, for changing the narrative of your own life. And that is so important. I think that is something that a lot of people struggle with, right. They're not able to see um I would say the tranquility in the chaos, right? And that just stuck with me. The thing that you talked about. I think that is so powerful, and we need to make it kind of a routine every day. I think that would really help shift our mindset every day. But
Yes.
it brings me to something I have been really curious about, and I think you're the best person to ask this to. So grief doesn't affect us emotionally. It can also take a real toll on our, I would say, mental or spiritual or even physical health on extreme levels, right? So
Yes.
how have you been or how have you seen emotional health impact the mind, especially in areas like anxiety or even decision
Mhm.
making?
Yes, this is a great question. It's something few people know about how it actually affects you physically. I'm going to talk about that first. So I had no idea. And after Luke died, so he had cancer, but he actually died from a blood clot. So I started 3 days later after he died, I thought I felt a blood clot in my leg. Like it was so real. And I didn't. Obviously, I was fine, but that whole first, 6 months, I thought I was dying all the time, and then I read this book, and the author it was called, I think, Anxiety: The Forgotten Stage of Grief, and she talks about if you have been through any kind of death, especially if you've watched the death, your anxiety can go through the roof. So that's what I've
Mm,
experienced. I've seen this with other people who are so afraid of dying because that's what we saw. I've seen it take a toll emotionally, where it's hard to even get out of bed. Like that's a really in fact, the first goal in my book is called Get Out of Bed, that can be something that's
mm,
really difficult because it kind of feels like everything you were looking forward to in life is now gone in an instant, whether that's a death, a relationship, a divorce, everything's gone. And your mind is searching for something good. And that's why that thankfulness thing is a good first step because it helps you to look for it. I've seen it
right.
spiritually. People walk away from their faith. But like I said, really pouring into what you're feeling is how you're going to work through that. And you just have to figure it out for yourself. That's the thing about grief. Like, I can't walk through it for anyone. Like my kids, I'd love to do it for them. I'd love to do the work, but the only way they're going to get through it
Mm.
is to feel it. And another thing that people do that's not correct is when someone's crying, we try to like console them and try to get them to stop crying. That actually stops their grief.
That is right.
And so I've done this with my kids. I remember my daughter just like 2 years ago, like really crying about something. And I told her what I was doing. I said, I'm not hugging you right now because I need you to feel this because it's the only way you're going to work through that. And so I try to teach people that. And in our grief recovery classes, you're not allowed to hug anybody, touch anybody, like give them Kleenex. You just let them feel it because that. And so many people say sorry when they stop crying. I said, no, feel it. It's good. This is so good. And so I then I challenge people to stop, saying sorry for your tears because you got to own those and feel those. And then also, if you're around someone crying, you might want to explain it because they might not understand it, but like, I'm not hugging you right now because I want you to feel this because I want you to go through this. And of course, when they're like kind of done crying, then you can give them a hug and all that. And it is different with like little kids. That's a little bit different. But, with someone old enough to understand that we have to let them go through it. And so, yeah, I've seen grief affect people in all different ways. I've definitely seen my oldest was 15 and it affected him like in anger. That was a big thing for him. He just didn't know what to do. Had a lot of behavior issues. He's now 21 and doing much better. He just didn't know where to put his grief. And,
Right.
I've seen it affect people where they can't eat or they constantly eat. It's just every person's grief is so unique. Even if I meet another person, another widow, she's gone through a similar death, I can't say to her, I understand how you feel because it's different. And that's another thing that I want to correct for people. If you're around someone grieving, please don't say I understand how you feel and try to make it sound like you do because it's like minimizing their grief. Like let them be the only one who knows exactly what that is like. And so yeah,
Right.
grief can show up in so many different ways.
Mm, it's a very strong message that you shared, Michelle. And I could relate this to a little off topic, but I could relate this to parenting. I would say, like
Yeah.
if you have been, going. So I can also relate this to, I would say, a coping mechanism, right? Everyone has their own coping
Yes.
mechanism to different kind of losses, and it just resonates with me or resonated with me a lot. That if you give someone their personal space, right, and let them feel it, like you say, that induces, I would say, or they realize what, or they realize how they can cope up with that particular loss. So everyone has different coping mechanism, like I said, and I think that's the hardest part. I think for people to believe that peace can exist again even after that loss, or even after everything changes. So before we close, I want to bring it to right to the people who's listening to this right now. If someone feels like they'll never find peace again, what would you say to them in this exact moment?
Mm, it's possible. I'm living proof. That's the thing that all I wanted to know is I called everyone I knew who was widowed and called them and said, please tell me it gets better. And their examples are what helped me get through it. Look for other examples of people in your situation. So maybe yours is a breakup, a divorce, or something. Find someone in your situation who's on the other side of it and has made it and talk to them because that is what's going to give you hope. And the other thing is, you have to pour into your grief. So I love to share this example. It's from grief recovery. Let's say you went to your car right now and you had a flat tire and you're like,
Mm.
it'll be better in a year. I'm not going to do anything. And you come back in a year. No, it's still flat. It's the same with our grief. If we don't do the work, if we're not, going to counseling, reading grief books, listening to podcasts, all of the things, we're going to be in the same place in a year. And so that's another thing I want to encourage people who feel like that right now. Please do the work. Find somebody who is specific to what you're going through and get the work, get the help. Grief counseling is amazing. There are specific counselors that are just for grief. There's a program like what I do called grief recovery. There's so many things that you can do in order to move forward. And I have people that come to grief recovery for all kind, not just death. It's divorce, it's loss of a pet, it's loss of a home, it's whatever. And so it doesn't matter what your grief is. Grief is grief and pain is pain and it all hurts. And it's all relative to what we're experiencing. So don't think, oh, my story is not as bad as hers. No, that's what you're feeling in this minute. And you are someone who should be able to get help too and to work on yourself and just know that you're not going to always, it's not going to feel as bad as it does in the very beginning, for sure.
Michelle, that's I would say very insightful, and the examples that you shared, the fat tire one's very relevant though. And thank you for sharing not just your wisdom, I would say, but your lived truth. What really stays with me from this conversation is that peace isn't a destination you reach after loss. It's
Mm.
something you build slowly through trust, but even more than trust, acceptance
Yeah.
um, and grace. So thank you for reminding us, Michelle, that even in the deepest grief, transformation is possible. And just before we wrap this off, for people listening to this right now, what's the best way for them to connect to you?
Yes, on social media, it's at Widow Goals. That's on TikTok, Instagram. If they want to email me with a question or anything, it's Michelle at widowgoals.org. And also, you can go to widowgoals.org to learn more about the books and the programs and all the stuff we talked about.
Perfect. Dear listeners, I'll have the details in the show notes for you, so you can check them out anytime at your own convenience. And with that, we come to an end to today's conversation with Michelle. Michelle, thank you for sharing your heart and your hope with us today. Your story is a reminder that loss doesn't have to define us, it can refine us. And healing the heart truly transforms the mind. To everyone listening to this right now, if you are in middle of grief, know that peace isn't gone. It's waiting for you on the other side of the coin. You need to only accept and surrender. Take that first step. Until next time, I am Sayan and this is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. Stay gentle with yourself and keep choosing healing one moment at a time. Thank you.